So, welcome, welcome. Good to see you. I am so glad you're here and joining us for another episode recording of the podcast, Maria and Friends. I'm so excited that you're here joining us. And tonight is going to be a very special one. So, I recommend that you share, you like, and let everybody know. Send them a text. Hey, my favorite show is on. We're glad you're here. So let's go ahead and get started because I want to dive right deep into these into these questions because I know it's going to be a blessing. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome back to Maria and Friends, another episode of Maria and Friends. Tonight's conversation is special, important, and deeply personal for so many because we're talking about grief during the holidays. The season is filled with lights, family gatherings, and celebration. But for many, it's also filled with memories, empty chairs, and emotions that feel heavier this time of the year. If you're listening and your heart feels a little fragile, you're in the right place. Tonight, we're holding space for you. I'm joined by my amazing co host, Ulises, and a very special guest, Coach Smilie, a grief expert who brings wisdom, compassion, and real tools to help us navigate this season with honesty and grace. My prayer is that as you listen, you feel seen, you feel understood, and you feel permission to be exactly where you are in your healing journey. So take a deep breath. Grab something warm to drink and let's talk about grief, hope, and finding gentle ways to move through the holidays together. So, welcome, welcome, Coach Smilie. Welcome.
Nice to be here once again. Nice to see you and Ulises. Thank you for having me.
Ulises, nice to see you. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Welcome back. Yes, yes. I was in Colorado for the week enjoying my loved ones and family. It's great to be back. I do miss the mountains, though. The mountains were beautiful. I will say though, the elevation was is different. It is
Mm.
harder to breathe when you out there in the mountains, and man, my old body, my old lungs felt it. It was it was tough, but it was good though. I had a great time. Thanksgiving, was amazing. So, you guys, you ladies, how was y'all Thanksgiving?
Yes, my Thanksgiving was good. I wasn't able to be with my entire family, but I was able to be with my mom and also my husband's side of the family. So we had a lovely time. Traffic, I have to say this, traffic was like on our side. God really helped us with that because we were traveling from borough to borough, and this is the first Thanksgiving that we didn't hit major traffic and that we found parking in both locations right away. So
Wow.
I am so thankful, but it was lovely. Thank you for asking.
I personally, we had a good family time. We ate. Comimos de todo. We had
Ay.
leftovers. I think there's still some leftovers in the fridge. We've been eating turkey for everything, turkey tacos, turkey sopa. So we're good. I think I'm done. I think I'm done with the turkey. I'm ready to go vegan for a couple of days. So, so let's go ahead and get started with this topic that we're going to talk about grief during the holidays. And one of the reasons to me is important that we talk about this is because we know that a lot of people are right now celebrating with loved ones, and I want to hold space, like a sacred space, amongst us friends, for those people who are just dealing with grief that sometimes they don't want to mention, they don't want to bother other people, but they're missing their loved ones. I know that this year in my life, I experienced grief in a different way because we lost one of our dear pastors at our church, and this that loss was very dear to me,
Mhm.
and it was very unexpected. And I was not we were not ready, and I don't think you're ever ready, right? And yeah, I know you'll talk a little bit more about that, but I wasn't ready for the type of grief I experienced because he was not only a staff member, but he was my friend. And I remember hugging his wife and telling her, I lost a friend. He was just not my coworker. He was my friend. So, and I remember in these holidays, these days, I've remembered him and honored his memory, and that made me think. You know what? Let's bring somebody in. And I was talking to Ulises, and we had a long conversation about this and grief, and I said, let's bring somebody in because I'm not an expert. I don't know about you, but let's bring somebody in that can help us navigate this conversation. And that's where you came in mind, and that's where we're here.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. And thank you so much. For those that don't know me, my name is Smilie, and I formerly was a mental health professional. I'm still a mental health professional, but now I'm practicing as an empowerment life coach, mindset strategist. I also have a background in grief counseling, and I want to share a disclaimer before we jump right into the questions. That before we begin, I want to be very clear. This topic can be very triggering. So if at any point you feel triggered, we want you to take care of yourself. You can pause, you can return and come back, or actually completely log out. And I believe that this is going to be offered in replay in YouTube. So you can come back to it again if it's too much for you, too triggering. Also, I am here as a life empowerment coach, and I am not here as a therapist or counselor. I do hold my MSW, and everything that we share here is more educational, for support, for coping, not for diagnosing, making diagnosis or treatment. And we're not asking you to substitute anything that we say here today from your therapist or any type of crisis counselor that you may have, or medical care, or any other licensed professional. Okay. So I hope that you enjoy. Please share the comments and the questions, and go nice and easy with yourself. And if you need my support at any point during this session, please let us know in the comments.
All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. And Ulises, let us know, why do you think talking about grief in this season is important?
Well, to me, it's super important, mainly because you know, speaking on death and speaking on things that are abrupt. It's hard to process certain situations, depending on the season, the time, and as you said earlier, it's like there's never really a time to like prepare for it. So
Mhm.
having somebody who um, can really understand where you're coming from, having somebody that you can actually talk to and they'll actually listen, um, somebody who just as simple as a hug, simple as a listening ear, simple as let's I don't want you to be alone, let's go out for some coffee. Like there's that community, that support
Mhm.
is major, it's huge. Most people, if you live long enough, you will experience some level of grief, one shape, fashion, or form. So, I believe this is an amazing topic, especially in this time of the year, for us to learn. And we have an amazing guest who has the wisdom and the knowledge to really help with that. So, I'd like to start off, Coach Mott, if you don't mind. Um, when we say grief during the holidays, what are we really talking about? Are we? Is it just about death? Can there be some other form of grief? And if you don't mind, also talk about, like, what does grief look like? What are the stages of
Mhm.
grief?
Mhm. So thank you for asking this important questions. During the holidays, grief can look very different. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to point at someone right now, and I'm going to share this with you. This is what grief looks like, because I'm actually grieving, right? During this holiday season. And this is the face of grief. We have to be very careful when there are clear signs of grief that I'll get to it in a few minutes, but there are also times when people can actually mask very well their grief, right? So just be very careful that you may see someone who is displaying that they are, they may look like, if they're happy, they may smile, which there's nothing wrong with that. They may go about their day like, I'm in this interview today, right?
Mhm.
However, I am still grieving. So we have to be careful also when we may not fit the box of the signs of what it looks on the exterior. And during the holidays, it's very important to understand that grief may intensify during the holiday. That's what's called the grief, right? During the holidays. You may feel it louder, right? It's because the season of that we're celebrating, it's supposed to be joyful. However, you may have been experiencing the death of someone that you love dearly, also a divorce, a miscarriage, a breakup, a loss of a pet, a loss of a job, loss of your health, right? Or if someone that you love that their health decline. It may be even as far as grieving the loss of a dream that you had that was very significant. So you as that person during the holidays, you may be experiencing more the intensity of missing how the relationship used to be, if it's a friendship breakup, if it's that someone that passed away, right? The version of you as a person, right, is different when that relationship, whether it's physical or emotional, it's no longer existing. And it's very valid to feel that grief. And it does intensify during the holidays because of all the, right, the
Mhm.
culture, the social norms, the commercials you may see, right?
Yeah.
That absent chair in the dinner table. So it does intensify for many of us during the holidays.
So
Awesome.
let me ask you also, I really like what you just said when you pointed at yourself. This is what grief looks like,
Yeah.
because I'm glad you made that distinction, because a lot to me, a lot of times when I think of somebody grieving, I think of the person crying, con ojeras, and
Yes.
just falling apart and just
There's times like
throwing
that.
themselves, very dramatic, very like exaggerated, very, all that stuff. And then so to me, that's what grieving looks like. But if you're telling me that some people don't grieve the same, some people look normal,
Mhm.
some people look just like, anything else, that's correct, right? Or does everybody have to grieve so dramatically?
Right. It's interesting that you are using the word dramatically to describe grief. And I'm pointing this out because we do have trust between us, but even the language in which you're processing it right now, and you're saying dramatic, exaggerated.
Yeah,
And I just want to bring light to the language you're using, and it's just for educational purposes, right?
absolutely,
Many of
absolutely.
us sometimes feel, oh, está exagerando, it's exaggerated, it's
Oh,
so
sí,
dramatic,
sí,
right?
sí.
However, it really doesn't need those labels. They are feelings, right?
Uh-huh.
They're just feelings that we have. And the different signs of grief, right? How you can tell is in different categories. There's emotional signs, right? There's physical signs, and there's behavioral signs. And all of these signs, they're not exaggerated. They might be more pronounced and
Okay.
they may feel more intensified. And we as humans, we use the word loosely, exaggerated or, right? But that may hurt somebody's feelings that's grieving. They didn't hurt mine. I didn't take anything offense to that.
Yeah.
But I can see someone else feeling like when they say, "Oh, estás tan exagerada," right? You're exaggerating, dramatic, and not necessarily. It's the emotion. So the first sign could be emotionally, right? So
Mhm.
you may feel sadness, tearing up, anger, irritability, moodiness, difficulty concentrating. So this could be you experiencing it, or you may have a loved one that's experiencing that. So those are the emotionals, feeling helpless, right? You, as the person who's grieving, can feel helpless, but guess
Mhm.
what? People around you
Absolutely.
watching you grieve can also feel helpless, right? Then we have the physical signs, and I hope people are really taking notice to what I'm sharing, because you may want to be self-aware for yourself or for another loved one and say, "Ooh, I've seen that," right? In the physical signs, it could be a lack of sleep, too much sleep, right? It could be a change in the appetite, the weight. Some people, when they're grieving, they may lose weight. Some people gain weight. It could be stomach aches, headaches, right?
Mm.
Upset stomachs, muscle tension,
Oh, wow.
especially in around. right? The shoulder area. People
Right.
can be experiencing feeling out of breath. I remember when there's different, I've had multiple, and we'll get to it in a minute, because there's complex grief and then there's simple, right? Like something more normal grief, and then there's complex grieving. And I remember when someone very close to me, like my sister, passed away, I didn't cope well necessarily, even though I know about, right, bereavement and
Yeah.
grieving. And one of the signs, I had physical signs. I felt like my breath was taken away. I was
Wow.
hyperventilating almost the whole day, not just at one time.
Wow.
So someone may think, what's wrong? Tan exagerada, no puedes respirar. You could breathe, but literally,
Wow.
physically, I was experiencing that, right? Tightness of chest. And then we have behavioral signs. And that's when if you're grieving or someone else, the signs are isolation, withdrawing, right? Putting up the walls, losing interest of things that you used to like, especially things that maybe that other person and you, whether it's a divorce or whether it's someone that passed away, you may want to avoid the places that they were, that you and that person had encounters, right? Crying a lot as well, having crying spells. I found myself, and I speak a little bit about me because tonight people are going to be vulnerable, and I just don't want
Yeah.
to come across as a coach. I'm a human being. And I
Absolutely.
remember there was a time, and if you guys, anybody else can relate with this, please let us know, where I would get on the bus, right? Recent, actually, the first 6 months of the person passing. And I would get on the bus and going to work, and I thought I was fine. All of a sudden, I feel my face is wet, and I'm like, my face is wet, but I don't understand. My tears were rolling down
Mm.
without me even realizing that they were being released. They weren't even
Wow.
triggered by anything. I was just sitting on the bus, and all of a sudden my tears, and I noticed my face was wet, and it was surprising to me. So that in itself is a sign of grief, right? So I hope that that helps a little bit.
Gina has a comment. It says Gina put here. Often I didn't grieve normal. I was
Mhm,
spending money like crazy. I was angry, full of
mhm.
anxiety, and in denial. I was in a fog, wishing I would just
Die.
I would just
Die. I,
dial smile. Most thought I was okay. Even my husband.
That is very common. Very, what I would say is very normal. And the reason I use the word normal, and thank you for sharing that and your vulnerability, because that's courageous of you. I say that it's normal because we need to normalize these behaviors that we have when we're grieving. Oftentimes, people give us timelines of when you should be already, what some people even say, let it go. I know we're going to get into a little bit more about what not to say. Like when we tell someone they're in a better place, they don't want you to suffer, your loved one doesn't want you to suffer. Those things are really not helpful, especially at the beginning of grief. They're not as helpful. You may think they are, and we've been taught
Yeah.
um, that those are appropriate, but in reality, they're not. So we have to normalize speaking about this. So I'm so happy that we're here tonight having this discussion.
Coach, you know, it's amazing because when we talk about um, the feelings that we have and things of that nature, and some people are like, oh man, you're just being dramatic or whatever the case is.
Hmm.
Um, as a man, right? As a man, we for the most part we are taught to be strong. That we got to be strong for, and a lot of women too. I'm not excluding genders here, but in society we see it with men, but we also see it with the woman who's known to be the strong one in the family, where they can't really show their emotions, and for the sake of for everybody else. Um so what are the common what are some of the common mistakes that people make when they try to stay strong during these times?
Well, when you try to, and also I commend you for opening up about the distinguishment about men. And I've done podcasts and have had hold space for men to talk about the issue when men feel that they can't share their emotions. And oftentimes I say, ladies, we also want to take accountability that sometimes when men do open up with us
Yeah.
in the simplest of way, there are times that we mock them, right, for
Yeah.
tearing up in a movie, and that actually shuts them down, right? Especially culturally, we've been taught, oh, men don't cry, they're not supposed to cry. They're And men are because physically with the muscles and everything, you have more strength than us. But yeah, right? He's flexing. Um, so men may be like, oh, you're the strong one. However, in the gender, right? However, men have feelings too. And a common mistake that we make to stay strong, regardless of the gender and however you identify, is that we pretend that everything is fine. We hold back tears. We want to dive into work. That's a mistake, and overwork in place of really coping and sitting with the feelings. We numb ourselves sometimes with alcohol or food or doom scrolling, right? And that all can be okay for short term, right? Not excessively. But when over time, we want to keep this facade that we are strong, what it does, it harms us. And it harms us not only mentally and emotionally, but even physically, right? Our body keeps score. Okay. So it's
Absolutely.
important to release your emotions, whether you do journaling, whether you seek therapy, whether you have a trusted friend that you can share with, trusted friend that has the capacity
Hmm.
to hold space for what you're going to share. Some friends, as much as we love them, and family members, they don't have the capacity, the emotional intelligence or maturity or the bandwidth to see you while you're suffering. They rush through your commenting of whatever you're feeling. Some
Right.
people, tough, they feel like, all right, already, this is like the third time and it's already been 8 years and you keep talking about the same thing. I've had friends that shared with me at one point for me to let go some of the things that I was expressing, that I was feeling, because it's already been 5 years. And what I noticed was they had an uncomfortable time processing my emotions, let alone
Hmm.
their own, because they also knew the person. So we have to be mindful that not everybody has the capacity. So if you're watching this show today, that's a way of you
Yeah.
also releasing, right, a little bit what you're feeling. And that's why I always highly recommend professional help,
Absolutely.
because that's a person who is not involved, right? It's a person that helps you to process. So the common mistakes is really you thinking and trying to impress other people that you are the strong one. And someone, sometimes by choice, your family may have labeled you as the strong one and actively you act that way. But when you're grieving, it's okay to break down, and it's okay to say, you know what? In this instant, I don't feel strong. I don't have this all together. I can't make those arrangements. You're going to have to help me with that. I can't get up to cook and do these activities that I used to do. Be honest with what you can and cannot do, with your friends and with your loved ones.
And Gina, I don't know if you want to comment on this, Coach. Gina says, no sleep. I didn't bathe. My hair fell out. I was a
Mm.
mess. My car went into repo. I was paying extra on my other vehicle and I hadn't paid my car. I was a mess. Didn't cry. I was empty, especially when my brother died. I had nothing left. And then later on, as you were talking, Gina says, exactly, we are not meant to hold it in.
Absolutely. And Gina, once again, thank you for sharing. And I'm sorry about your brother. It's very difficult. And we go through the 5 stages of grief that I know Ulysses had mentioned earlier, tying it in. And one of the first signs is denial, right? Is when you really hear first of the news and you're like, you can't believe it. You're in disbelief. And none of these signs, they have to be like in order. Usually they have shown with the studies that there is like a pattern, but you can jump from one sign to another at different times, stages. The first one is denial. The second one is really you feeling angry, right? Because maybe the person that passed away, there's some unresolved issues, or angry with, you might be angry with
Yeah.
God, like how did you allow this to happen? And then the third is bargaining, right? Where you may feel like, if only, right? If I do this, maybe things could go back to normal.
Okay.
If I promised, right, the person that I'll be a better person, so maybe they can come back, if that's like a divorce, in a
Yeah.
situation like that.
Mm.
And then 4 and 5 is the depression, which I think,
Oh wow.
Gina, you were experiencing, when you didn't, you didn't have energy to bathe, an interest to be with anyone, right? And having that emptiness feeling, that's a sign of depression, right? And then number 5, that stage is the stage that a lot of us, when we're grieving, we want to rush to get to that stage, but it doesn't happen overnight, which is acceptance, right? Accepting and understanding the loss, that it's real, that it did happen, and to begin a bit to adjust to life without this person or the relationship, right? And then there's a 6th stage that is finding meaning, and this is a stage that they usually don't talk about it. If you want to purchase the book, it's not my book, but Finding Meaning, that's the name of the book. And this is a sixth stage where people are finding meaning in their life after the person has passed, right? After the loved one has passed away. And the author is his name is Kessler. Let me see his first name. Because if you want to purchase the book, Kessler did this book and he added a stage, and it's the finding meaning stage, right?
Wow.
And this helps people to move forward. So Dina or Gina, I recommend the book. I have it myself. It's called Finding Meaning,
Okay.
and it can help. It can really help you. That's a resource that you can have. Life after what right, finding that meaning after the person has passed or the change has set in your family.
Coach, we have a couple of comments, so I'd
Yes.
like to read some questions. So I promise I will try to get to all of your comments. So Pri says, how do we deal with pregnancy grief? I am currently
Hmm.
experiencing what I believe is prenatal depression and not quite sure how to cope. So before you answer that, let me read another one so we can let's see, we already read Gina's. Pantera from Juarez. He says, but when you're raised by a woman and what she teaches you is to be romantic and your first letter is to be romantic, what happens? Not sure what that is, but okay, there you go. So, so I think I understand what he's saying,
I
but
think
anyway,
I understand what
Yeah.
okay.
I kind of understand what he's
Because he's
saying.
trying, you know what? Because he's trying to translate it in English.
Hmm.
So he's probably using that. Annette, she says, my husband went to be with the Lord in September of 2023. And at my family gathering, my brother said my husband's name instead of the person's real name. He looked at me and I could see the sadness in his face if missing him there. I was sad, but also beautiful to see he's still there with us in our hearts.
Beautiful.
And Annette says, I kept myself busy. It may be a form of denial. And then Annette says, I may be doing the stages out of order.
That's normal. That's
And then
normal. Mhm.
Gina says, I'm going to get it, which I'm assuming is in regards to the book.
Oh yes, yes, that's an excellent book. And pause when you have the book. I have the book and I still have not finished it because it can be very triggering. And so take your time. That's another thing I want to share tonight. Give yourself grace. Don't rush. I know that it feels so uncomfortable and it can be very painful. So we want to rush through the pain, but the body needs time. Your mind needs time. If you're a person of faith, I'm a person of faith. I practice prayer. Be open about, right? Talking to God, praying. It's important to do that, right? Because that helps you as well. And I believe, I don't know the lady's name that talked about
Oh,
the
Pre.
the pre.
She says, how do we deal with pregnancy grief? She's currently pregnant. And I'm currently experiencing what I believe is prenatal depression and not sure how to cope.
That's very interesting. In your case, right, you may be feeling very odd because you're like, but why am I sad? Remember when, and I'm a mom as well. So remember, and even if you're not a mom, you may have a friend who's pregnant. There's a lot of hormonal changes, and also I would ask that you seek professional help because I think it would be very beneficial to you. Also speak with your doctor in reference to really looking at your vitamin supplements as well, because certain vitamins like vitamin D, when we lack vitamin D, any human being, when you're lacking vitamin D, also B12, you may have a deficiency that causes you to have these symptoms of depression. And also, I'm going to add to you, if you do journaling, some of the questions that you can journal about is like, why am I feeling this way? And sit with that a little bit. You may have some underlying roots of maybe situations that you're not even conscious about. Maybe someone is missing in your life while you're, pregnant. Maybe things are not, I don't know if this is your first pregnancy. There might be some fear, or if this is your
It's her first.
second. It's your first. So I remember when it was my first, I had a little bit of what you're sharing too, because of there was complex issues too when it came to my health, and there were certain limitations because I was bedridden that I had to be after my third month. So that saddened me and depressed me because I didn't feel like a person that's normal, and it's, hanging out with her belly. And that caused me to feel sad and different. So that's why I'm asking you to explore a little bit about what type of lifestyle you have right now. Talk with your doctor for your to really examine if there's any supplement deficiency. If you need to, seek some counseling for a brief time so you can unpack and share. And don't isolate yourself. Do your best to do activities that will help you through this process. I hope that these tips help, but definitely seek some professional help as well.
And can you talk about that's very interesting what Annette said, that she said she feels that sometimes she's grieving out of order. Is that okay
Yes.
too? I mean,
Yes, absolutely. Remember when I just said that about the stages? They're in
mhm.
no really, they don't have to be in an order. However, they did so many studies, and I personally have experienced grief, and I've counseled people in grieving. And usually the first thing is that, right, you're shocked, and you're shocked with the news and you're in disbelief. That's really very, unless you knew. And still, even if the person was ill, terminally ill, it's still very shocking when you first hear. But you can skip stages. And after
Mhm.
you're grieving for a while, you may enter feeling like, oh my God, I feel again in denial.
Oh
And
wow.
it's already been a year. And you're like, I thought I was already in acceptance. So that's why it's important to give yourself grace and be honest with how you're feeling. And you don't have to be boxed to the stages either. So don't feel like, well, I didn't feel stage 3. I didn't feel.
Mm,
This is just a sort of guidance, but it
okay.
doesn't necessarily mean that everything has to fall into the 5 stages and then the new stage of finding meaning 6. Okay.
Good stuff. Good stuff. No, definitely appreciate you sharing that. Because when I was pregnant back in, no, I was joking.
Oh my god.
You know,
Oh my god.
but but I really do appreciate, especially when it comes to, and um your friend from Juarez kind of alluding to it, because like, as an example, like I always saw my father as the machismo, the strong type, right? My father had four brothers, and they all passed away. Father passed away,
Wow.
and every single time he had to be the strong one.
Wow.
He had to be. He lost his youngest brother, to an illness, lost his oldest brother, and so just like literally four, no,
Wow.
five of his brothers, excuse me, five of his brothers all passed away. And so it was like, so this was my model as a man, that if anything happens, make sure everybody else is good first. Make sure that everybody else has their chance to grieve, and everybody, hey, how are you? I'm good. I'm good. I'm fine. I'm great. I'm gonna be okay. and then, and so seeing that and understanding, like, yes, be strong, but also, yes, as unhealthy way to process.
Mhm.
Because, I found myself, I know I found myself isolating myself
Mm.
when grieving what happened, because I didn't want nobody to see me break down, the whole nine. So it's like, and especially during the holidays when like you feel it the most, right? You feel it the most. So why do the holidays feel like the grieving is heavier, or it's just more of a worse time to experience it?
And thank you for sharing, Ulysses, your
Yeah.
vulnerability as well. I always say that when people open up, even in this platform, it takes courage, and I thank you for that. The holidays, it's a moment for us to feel joyful and to be festive, right? And that person that you're missing, you did the holidays with, right? And everything in our culture, especially in the United States, but everything in our culture, when it's holiday time, the commercials, the stores, right? Everything is
Mhm.
very joyful. Now picture this. If the world is joyful, but your world has just shattered.
Wow. Yeah.
But you're living in a world. I remember one of my first grieving, I'm talking about I was very young in my early 20s. And I remember that I felt that I wanted the world to stop, especially when we were traveling, going to the burial, and there was traffic. I felt everything was just so, I felt like everybody, please stop. And actually, culturally in Puerto Rico, I'm from Puerto Rico, and in Puerto Rico, back in the days, I don't know now if they do it as much, but when there was the procession, right, of the cars passing, people in Puerto Rico would, everybody would stop in, on the road and just stop and give like respect. And nowadays that's not really the case, or more, but you feel that, you feel like you want your world to stop. So during the holidays don't stop, right? You have people in your circle too, that they're going out, they're hanging out, while you're isolating, while you're withdrawing. So the holidays, it's a time, while it's joyful, it's also a time for us to be conscious that not everyone is in the holiday spirit. Not everyone has their loved one. It might be the first year that they don't have their parents. It might be at the same time. I remember my husband went through that. He lost his parents both 9 months apart, and it was during the
Wow.
holiday season. And our Christmas and our New Year, we were in raw grief
Wow.
for him losing both of his parents. So the holidays intensifies what we're feeling due to the heightened joyful moments and everything that the world shows us, right? That is a festivity. And it's difficult. That's when you have to check in on people. Don't force yourself for people, even in your own family unit. Some people grieve differently and they want to have the dinner celebration. You may be like, but I don't want to. And it's okay to skip it this year. Even
Yeah.
if it's been 3 years, it doesn't matter. There's some, when I counsel folks, they've said, oh my God, it's been 3 years. And last year I had a better coping to the holidays than this year that is day four. I mean, year four. So you see, Ulysses and Maria and everyone who's watching, it's very complex. Grieving is complex. So human beings are complex and the way we process. So give yourself grace, and give yourself grace with yourself and with others, and be true to what you're feeling as
And
much
we
as you can.
And we have another comment by Annette. She says, I felt okay after 40 years together. Peace, acceptance, because of what I saw him go through. But yes, I feel different emotions at different times, and that's okay. And also, we have Gina saying, telling Pre that she's praying for you, sweet mama, and then
Oh,
to reach out to her. So that's good too that we're making the connections. She says, no professional, but I'm a good listener and I have lots of, experience with pregnancy. So, and then we also have Gina's always saying very complex and don't be ashamed.
Don't
And
be
we
ashamed.
also have Tate's Wealth Journey says that is so true. The holidays make the pain stronger if you're going
Yes.
through it. That happens. And Pre says, Gina, thank you so much. Beautiful. All right. So, and let me ask you the next question. What are some common mistakes people make when they try to stay strong or push through the holidays while
We
grieving?
we actually had
We did,
mentioned we did do that, but I could say again, right? It's like holding it
yes.
in, right? Numbing yourself with maybe alcohol or food or overeating, um, diving into work more and overworking yourself to the point where you can become physically ill, or in couples, right? Sometimes during grief, couples, especially if they lost a son or daughter, right? There's sometimes one or the other, they dive in more into work and less being in the home, and that sometimes creates differences in the marriage, and sometimes they have to go to couples counseling, right, because the loss impacted their marriage. So these are for you to try your best to show up in the relationship, but be honest, I'm not okay
Yeah.
and I'm not strong.
Yeah.
When we hide behind that facade of superhero, what happens is that we suffer a lot, because somewhere your body will pay the price for all that pent up grief and emotion, and others may suffer of not having you, right, totally present, and for you to be honest with them.
If someone doesn't feel like decorating, celebrating, or going, to all these gatherings, what would you tell them? Is it okay to set boundaries and say, you know what, I'm not feeling it. Please excuse me. I'm not gonna attend. Is that okay, or do you have to push through?
Absolutely, absolutely okay to say no. And that's something, whether you're grieving or not, that we have to learn more how to say no without over explaining ourselves. But especially when we're grieving, and it's okay for you to skip this holiday, right? And it's okay also to say, you know what, I don't, I'm not able to go. I'm gonna skip this one, but we'll talk later, or you may send a gift for the person, or you may just have a complete different plan. Some people say, oh, you're not coming over, but I heard that you went to the movies. That's okay. You may want to skip going to the gathering, but maybe you decide to do something else. Permit yourself to choose yourself and how you're going to handle, right? That's a high act of self-care, right? And it's not
Mhm.
selfish. It really, well, it can be, in the sense that people say, well, that's more thinking of yourself, and that could
Yeah.
be very selfish, but in a healthy way, right? That you're taking care and prioritizing yourself. For decorations, I've known folks also that have said, let's keep it very minimal this year, or you know what, I'm not putting up the tree this year because I used to do that with my dad, or I used to do that, or even I just don't feel like it, so you could come over, but know that no tree this year. It's okay. All of that is normal, and it's okay to decide not to do.
No, I mean, no is one of the most powerful words in the dictionary. It's one of the most shortest
Absolutely.
ones, but it's also one of the most powerful ones because, especially, especially, especially in church circles, there's this idea that because we know Jesus, because we know God, that your grieving process, yes, let it hurt, but let's well, subconsciously or without realizing it, they're trying to make people rush it because God knows everything and they're with God now and they're at peace with God now. And so it's like, well, you should be able to overcome this because we know he's at a better place, or in the same light of, well, how come you're not coming to this church function? Or how come you don't want to decorate? Or like, why are you saying no when you should be saying yes? Because now was the time not to stay at home. Now was the time to, like, they got all these reasons why you should not say no. But and I love what you're saying, and I appreciate the transparency of the people that are listening in. It's like
That's right.
I was a straight mess, and I can only pretend, but for so long. So it's like there's coming from my background of, man, I gotta pretend that everything is, because I had a hard time saying no in certain situations, because it's like I gotta keep this facade that I'm strong. Now I gotta keep this facade that that I'm here for the peoples. So it's like, so I can't say no. So now I gotta pretend, and pretending has gotten to a place where it's like, you hear it, right? You hear the cliches that people say, as I was saying earlier. So how can family or friends support you or support a grieving person without the common cliches that we hear when it comes to grieving?
Thank you for sharing that. And I feel you when you were saying, when you were sharing about you kind of like having this facade. As you were saying it, I felt you in my heart, because that is so hard to do. Because what you're doing is you're taking care of other feelings before your own. That's in reality what we do when we pretend to be strong for the sake of others, right? And that is challenging.
We
Now,
have a comment. I'm sorry. We have a comment
yes.
from Tate's Wealth Journey. She says, when my brother passed, I was not a very happy person. I pulled away from my own healing. And also, we
Mm.
have Gina that she's asking a question. Can you touch on having small children while grieving? Last year, I couldn't do it. My husband did, but I had so much guilt. This year, I'm better. I'm in a better place for others who are in the thick of the grief, but they have small kids who don't understand mommy's grieving her mom.
Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so sorry. Yes, when we have small kids in the home, one of the best recommendations is to, depending, first of all, the age of the child, right? So it's not one universal way of treating your children under the age of 18, right? There's different stages. So depending the age of the child, but it's to be as honest as you can with, mommy's sad right now because grandpa died, right? So one of the things that we tend to sometimes do that we should not is tell the child, depending the age, but especially when they're a little bit older, oh, they grandpa is sleeping. And I've known people to say that because they have a hard time telling their child that grandpa died, the actual word died. However, it's best to do your best to not give your child, it's almost like, right, do you believe in Santa, right? Saying something
Yeah.
like, oh, he's sleeping, like when they're in the funeral or in the wake. You have to be careful with that. I would also say children are very sensitive. I would encourage for the family to get professional help where they can help you. And there's a child therapist that can work with the child, because children, the way they grieve also is very different. And when they're watching mom grief, we're modeling the behavior. And if they're not understanding,
Wow.
so it's helpful to get a professional to really work with you. There are also books that you can use in storytelling that has to do with grief, and that it can help you also with the child, right? So that's a high recommendation, a strong recommendation that I have, because children are very sensitive. They're very resilient, I have to say. Children can all of a sudden, they could be crying one moment and then another moment
Yeah.
they're playing like if nothing has occurred. And then for you, mom, that you are feeling so overwhelmed, I don't know who your support system is, which, how does it look like, but give yourself a day that's for you, right? That you can not be with the kids if it's possible, that you give yourself some space, because while you're grieving and having small children, it could be very overwhelming, as opposed to if you have already a teenager or young adults. It's different than when you have very small kids, especially under the age of 7, or
Hmm.
it can be very challenging. So I hope that that's a bit helpful. And remember, I'm not substituting what
Yeah.
a professional can say. However, I do believe that you can use books, you can use you can hire a therapist for play therapy with the child. Some people even go to family counseling, which at the same time with grieving, where the parents or caretaker with the child, everyone together is receiving services, and that also helps as well.
Yeah. So Gina asks, she has a comment. Oh, we were honest about death, but I was so depressed
Okay,
because I couldn't celebrate the holidays the way we were used to.
I
And
see what she
Gina,
means.
a good
Mhm.
friend is going through this now, and I am trying to support her. She has young kids, but she is just in a bad way. And I think you've touched on it, on us showing support, and just being there for our friends in the best way possible, and like what I'm learning, all this that you've been sharing, that we have to, if you feel like you can't deal with it, find somebody, find a support, find a professional to help you deal with this. If you need to talk to kids and you don't know how to manage the kids, find an expert or somebody that's trained to give you the tools and the understanding. And because I don't think that we should all have the answers, we don't know it all. So that's when we reach out to other people and say, hey, I'm going through this, and they got the tools, they got the training, how to deal with kids. Because I mean, you can traumatize a kid in this, and during this time. I've heard stories and people share things that when their parents were grieving, the different things happened. So it is a very complex issue,
Very
and I
complex.
believe that every family is different. Every family goes through it different, and even children. I believe that it varies from children to children. You got your sensitive child, and then you got your other type of child, and they deal with it differently. So
Differently.
like Coach was saying, we need somebody to help us navigate through all those feelings, and deal with each person. So we have some more questions, and
Can I just add
yes,
something because
absolutely, absolutely.
Ulysses touched on this, and I think someone else touched on like how to be there for the other person, because how do you support, and people have cliches, right? One of the things that, if you're the person that is offering the support and you don't know what to say, and you say, I always say the most inappropriate things, Coach
Yeah,
Smilie, because I'm nervous and I don't know what to say. It's okay. Sometimes less is better. So
yeah,
sometimes when you don't know what to say, you could just say, you know what? I am so sorry. This is hard. I want you to know that I'm here for you. Something very important that you could just say, what would you feel supportive this week? What would feel supportive to you this week from me? Because we often say, call me if you need anything. And when someone is grieving, I know that I have said it, but I also now am changing more the language, because I realize for me, when anyone has told me that, I don't even know what I want. I
wow,
do know what I want. I want this person to be back alive again, and that's what I want. I want things to go
wow,
back to what it used to be. I
Yeah.
want to not feel this pain. So when somebody says, I'm here for you, let me know what you need, you usually don't get calls from people telling you, hey, I thought about what I need, come over. No, but if you say, what would feel supportive this week, because from
wow,
week to week could be different, and that could be then the person saying, you know what would feel supportive, and you may even give suggestions, accompanying you to an errand, taking the kids out to the park while you sleep, having a quiet space. Maybe you want to go to the cathedral with me and we just sit there and just not even that happened to me when I had a miscarriage. um my best friend, right after, anyway, I don't want to get too deep on that, and it's years ago that it happened, but one of the things that she did after the doctor's office, she went with me to St. Patrick's Cathedral, and I was like, I didn't want to be around a lot of people, but we went when there wasn't a mass. And what we did, we just sat in the church quietly. We lit a candle. She was side by side, not saying much. Then after that, we went to eat brunch. We barely spoke about exactly what I was feeling, but her presence made me feel so understood, so loved. I didn't have
right.
to explain everything. So ask people, what can feel supportive to you this week? And then if they're stuck, just give them things. Do you want me to go shopping with you? Do you want me to go shopping for you? So just be
Yeah.
more active in what you can share, as opposed to saying, you tell me, how do you need me?
Years ago, maybe about, but I'll say maybe about 10, 15 years ago, I have a very good friend of mine. He was engaged, supposed to get married the whole nine. A tragic situation happened where his fiance passed away.
Mm,
Um, and the hardest call that I've ever had to take was that phone call. He called me and
Wow.
just he was in tears, busting out crying, just and there wasn't much he really could say but he was just like, tell me this isn't real. Just tell me I'm dreaming,
mm,
the whole nine. And usually, like, I'm a man who can usually have something to say, something, some level of wisdom, something that can help. But I just knew that at that moment there was nothing that I could say that can help the
mm,
situation. So, and all I did was I was on the phone with this guy for hours.
Wow.
We didn't say anything. We said little. But the fact that I was there, just there, was just allowing him to process those emotions, allowing him to process those feelings, allowing him to process, because he was blaming himself. It's
mm,
the stages that you see when it comes to, when somebody passed. We got into an argument, last yesterday, and if we didn't get into an argument, she wouldn't have left so there was a lot of, you
mm.
know a whole lot going on that he just had to process through. And so, I guess, my final question for you, Coach, if you don't mind, is, when it comes to being a listener,
Mhm.
and you know sometimes it's hard to be the one to listen to the person that's grieving, because it's like, I don't fully understand what you're going through. I don't fully understand what it is that you need from me. So, um and you alluded to earlier by saying, hey, what can I be for you this week, which is, I mean, I wish I would have had that knowledge, 15 years ago,
Mm.
but what else, can a listener do to help with somebody who is either recently grieving, or just kind of having, a relapse, in what it is that they're going through.
As we have our relationships with people, right? It's holding the space for people to just be. And it's difficult because, as the person who's supporting, you want to rush them through their grief process so you don't have to bear witness to their pain because you love them so much and
Wow.
you don't want to see them in pain.
Wow, that's
You
good.
do a disservice and you
Wow.
are hurting their feelings when you're trying to rush them through that. But it's because you're so uncomfortable also, because especially when you're close to someone, their pain, you feel their pain, especially also if you're an empath, you feel, right? So the most simplest thing that you could do is just be there. Also, see them,
Mm.
right? By seeing them, validate what they're feeling. Don't minimize. Don't use language like they're in a better place, or
Yeah.
you're like, remember what you just said, Maria, early in the top of the podcast, that you were saying
Yeah.
exaggerated and
Yeah. You're so dramatic.
so dramatic. Do your best not to see the person in that light, because I know we've been taught these type of lingos, and it's all in our subconscious. It's like automatic. They're in a better place. Automatic. This things happen for a reason. That's not
Or
the
God needed an angel, so he took them. I'm like, that is just
exactly.
like, I hear those
It's
things
just
and I'm
not
like, I
exactly.
just, I personally don't say too much, because I know
Hmm.
that there's nothing that I will say that make the pain go away. And sometimes I I just rather not say anything and just hold space.
Right.
And if you can, I just want to, if for those who don't know what hold space mean, if you could kind of explain to that to us, Coach. I know
So
Ulises was kind of sharing that he was holding space for his friend, but what is holding space? If you can explain for those who don't know what that means.
Right. So when we say holding space, and it doesn't matter if you're grieving or not, at any point that a friend holds that space for you, it's dedicating that time
Mm,
that it's about you, not about them,
okay.
right? And that you are having a safe space where they can say anything, they
Wow.
can cry as much as they want, and you're holding that time in place, whether it's on the phone like Ulises did, whether it's having them come over to your home or you to them, while it's going out for coffee and holding that space, that space and time is for them to be able to share how they feel and show up authentically. If they don't want
Wow.
to talk much, it's not for you to keep saying, but say something, but
Oh
and
yeah.
have a million questions. It's to hold the space for them to show up as they are. Now, with that, I have to say that there is what we call some tough love, where if you notice that the person, that's the difference between normal grief and complicated grief, right? Normal grief is what most people, right, over time they go through, right? Where they have this raw, intense grief for a period of time, right? But then they're able to integrate the grief, meaning they can still be active going to work, they can still miss the person, but they can still function. That's normal grief, right? They can still re engage with life. Complicated grief, right? It's when now you're having a very challenging time adapting to integrating back into life. So you feel kind of like stuck, right? And you have this intense yearning. You are not showing up to work most of the time. You're chronically being late, right? It really doesn't allow you the pain, because possibly the processing that you need more time, you need to process differently, but the pain stays longer and it's more strong than the
Mm,
normalcy, and it interferes with your daily life for a long period of time, sometimes months and even years. That's when your grief has become complicated. Okay, so, and I have some statistics here. Complicated grief affects around 7 to 10% of bereaved people, and roughly 2 to 3% of the general population worldwide, right?
wow.
So complicated grief is not as normal, frequent, right? I've experienced complicated grief because also when you're grieving multiple losses in a short span, like COVID, that was a time, right, where people
Oh
were
yeah.
losing people, right, in a short time, many people. And another thing, grief is not just one grief for multiple people. So it's not like if you lost, right, a parent and then your cousin and then a neighbor, it doesn't mean like for you to say, well, it's all one set of grief that I have to deal with. No, you had individual relationships with these individuals, and each grief is different and you process different for each one,
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
because those
So,
are
so for example, if
individual
somebody, so for
relationships.
example, somebody that's lost, like you were saying, two parents at the same time is two different types of grief. This is not just
Well,
all.
it's two
Is it just
because the
all?
relationship is different. And I know my husband won't mind. I'll share very briefly on
Mhm.
this, but he lost his mom and then he lost his dad. And the relationship with both, right? It's not that he loved his mom more, but there was more of a closeness with his
Mm,
mom, right? So the grieving process of his mom and his dad, I saw the span of it, how his grieving, the different stages. There was times that he was plateaued at one stage with one parent while he was in another stage with the other parent grieving.
wow,
So it's
that
not the
is.
same, because it's we all, like right now I have a relationship, right, with you, and I'm beginning a relationship with Ulysses. It's not the same. So if we have a fallout, because let's just talk briefly when it's not of death, but it could be your best friend and you are not speaking, or you parted ways, or there's a friendship breakup, the grief is very intense as well. And you go through those stages as
Yeah.
well, right? But if you have two friends, like I'm saying here, you and Ulysses, depending on the type of closeness and the way our relationship was, is the process in which I am going through the grief stages.
Wow. I did not know that you can grieve two different peoples or three or one and
The
grieve at
intensity could be
be at
different
different
as well.
be at
Even with
one
pet loss
stage and
too.
the other one. Wow.
Even with pet, like I lost my pet Bolt 2 years ago, and I have never ever displayed the emotions that I displayed when we had to um go and take him and have him, right.
Grief for pets is a real thing, huh?
But you know what happened? I started
Wow,
screaming,
that's crazy.
screaming. And why do I say this? I've gone through other losses and I never lost composure at a wake or anything like that. But for my pet, the intensity was so much that I started shouting, wailing. And I've
Mm.
never had that intensity displayed in that way. And somebody could say, wow, and it was for a pet, not for your mother-in-law. Not, but that's why I'm trying to tell you that
Wow.
every grief, you process it differently according to the relationship and right that you had with that person or your pet, and also where you're at. I think I was more sensitive because I've already experienced multiple losses. So when I lost Bolt, I was already grieving, right?
Wow.
So I think that that also kind of unleashed my
Yeah.
emotions.
Gina says, yep, I can relate to this. I lost 4 family members in 6 months. They were all different for me.
Yes.
That's something
Right.
I've learned today. That is an eye opener for sure.
Hmm.
We've had some really good conversation, Coach and Ulises. We've been sharing a lot. I know this has been a very heavy subject, but I believe very needed, very much needed. So
Oh, I'm
I don't
glad.
know if any Ulises and Coach, if you want to say anything else, so we can close this up. But I do
I
believe that this is we're just touching the surface. We're just touching the surface.
Yes.
We're just starting the conversation. Like Ulises and I have had many conversations, and we've shared in different podcasts that our purpose here is just to start the conversation, just bring a
Absolutely.
topic to the light, start the conversation, bring light to it, and go from there. And we have Ruben Colon from Puerto Rico. Saludos, Ruben. Saludos, saludos. Buenas noches.
You guys hear you? Do you
And
guys hear
so,
me?
yeah, we
Yeah.
can hear you perfect. We can hear you perfect. We fr-
Can
and
you hear
Annette
me?
says, "Thank you all. Yes, very helpful. We can hear you, Coach."
So while we figure out what's going on with Coach, when it comes to the grieving aspect,
You hear me?
Yes, we can
yes,
hear you.
I don't hear you guys. What happened?
We lost.
But you do hear me.
Yes,
we
Well,
perfect.
it's okay if you don't. I don't hear you guys. I don't know what happened. However, if you do
we
hear me, you do hear me? Okay, I don't hear you guys, but it's okay. I wanted to leave everyone with some gentle affirmations um for yourself. So take a deep breath. You could put your left hand in your heart. You could close your eyes if you like. And I want you to say these gentle affirmations for yourself. If you're grieving right now, it makes sense that it hurts. My feelings are valid. I can be grieving and still deserve moments of rest and joy. I am honoring my person by caring for myself today. I don't have to do this perfectly. I only have to take the next gentle step. And I want to leave you with those affirmations. And if anyone in the US is grieving and has ever had any thoughts of self harm or are devastated, please text 988 to reach to a suicide or crisis line that is 24 hours, 7 days, anyone by phone. And if you're in another country, just look at where there's a crisis lifeline in your particular country that can offer you emotional support. There's grief therapy. There's support groups that you can engage in. Speak to your doctor as well. Sometimes people, their depression is so severe that they may need some medicine. So just make sure that you take good care of yourself and continue connecting with community, whether it's in church or friends. Also listening to podcasts like Maria and Friends. I also have a podcast, the Smilie, Smilie, not with a Y podcast. And you can listen to my podcast as well, Smilie Empowerment Podcast. And it's been a pleasure. I hope that we encourage you, offered you support, and that we did hold space today, which was safe for you to be heard, understood. And I thank you for having me here.
Awesome, awesome,
Oh,
awesome.
I can hear you now. I don't know what
Yay!
happened.
I don't know what you touched, but you can hear.
I can hear you now.
Good, good,
I
good.
hope those affirmations were gentle enough for you to really focus on your self-care, and you're doing good. So pat yourself in the back, and thank you for being here. This is also a sign of self-care and normalizing this topic. Thank you both for having me.
Beautiful, beautiful. So, I don't like to leave the podcast on a heavy note. So I do have to share a story.
Yes, share a story. Let's
Oh my
let's
God.
and actually everybody can change their state by tapping, either tapping or snapping your fingers. This is really to change your state.
Clock it.
Clap
Clock it.
it, clap it,
Oh my
clapping,
God.
changing your
That's
state.
crazy.
When you do this, actually, literally, it changes your state, the chemicals. So it's something that you can do. So what's your story, Ulises? What's your
So
story?
I have a friend, and I, hearing your story about how you grieved your pet brought back a story that I have. And I kind of felt bad at first because I'm like, man, like, was I really a good friend? Because I laughed at him when he shared it with me, but he also laughed as well, right? So he was saying that he had this dog. He loved this dog. He had it for like a year. The dog got sick, and the dog passed away.
Mhm.
And the way that he grieved had me like, see, that might be a little bit dramatic,
Well, we shouldn't be judging, but you did do it. So tell the story as it is. And
Hashtag no judge zone. Hashtag no judge zone, people. So he told me, but he laughed. He laughed about it, so I was able to freely be like, yeah. So he said that he got when his dog passed away, that he was grieving so hard. He got into his car, went to the liquor store, got himself a bottle,
Mhm.
got himself a bottle, drove with the open bottle into an empty parking lot, and started doing donuts. Just Colonel, just Colonel. I was just doing donut. I'm listening to the story like, so you were willing and risking to get pulled over by the cops, drinking with an open bottle of Hennessy over this. I get you. I get, hey, Colonel was family. I get it. But you started doing donuts in the parking lot like a movie? Like this is like Dogs in the Hood instead of Boys in the Hood, Dogs in the Hood. Like what's happening right now? But he was laughing about it, but you could tell that he was definitely hurt because it was more of a quick passing. The dog got sick like 2 or 3
That's what
days
happened
later.
with me overnight. It wasn't even, I didn't even know. So what you see there, it's his behavior, right? That's a form of coping with, he was still in denial, most likely. And what do we do? We numb ourselves. We actually sometimes go down the path of self-destructive behavior where you're like, I know this is risky, but
Yeah.
it's a distraction, right? To what the raw pain is. And sometimes it's reckless. And
Yeah.
there's what's called reckless behavior that folks do sometimes when they're in a lot of pain and they're not coping with it. And that's what he did. And you can laugh about it. And thankfully, he didn't hurt himself or anyone else. And you can laugh about it. But in reality, if you think about it, he was in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And it was distorted, right?
Yeah.
Unless
I
that's
mean,
behavior that he
but
did all the time.
yeah, he's a very dramatic guy. Like anything can, but I'm not judging. I'm not judging. I'm not
Are
judging.
you not judging? Are you not judging? Because you just said he's a dramatic guy, and I
I
think
mean,
that
he's
to come to that conclusion, there is a level of
pouring one
judgment.
for the homie. Pouring
Oh
one
my
for the
God.
homie,
Gina says, dogs in the
Dogs in the
hood.
hood.
She's asking,
dogs in the hood. You know what I
have
mean?
you are you guys familiar with, it's a famous scene when I think about grieving and stuff and how just it all comes out like that. There's a scene with Sally Fields. I think it's Fried Green Tomatoes, the movie's called.
Oh, yes.
The scene in the funeral when she goes, I mean, I always think of how amazing that scene is, because you go from this deep sorrow and pain to just bursting out laughing, and in just
Yes.
within a minute you
Yes.
see the emotions from one end to another. And I always think of grief. And Gina says, thank you for making me laugh. And on that note, let's go ahead
Yes.
and if I'm just gonna go ahead and thank everybody for staying in tune, staying all the way to the end.
Thank you.
We're so appreciative of your support and everything that we're doing here. So please like, share, subscribe, all those wonderful things that help us to continue to make podcasts like this. And Steel Magnolias, thank you for correcting Annette. Annette corrected me. Thank you. Steel Magnolias. Thank you.
Yes.
Steel Magnolias. And Maritza Escarias says,
Oh my
great
God.
live. Thank you so
She's
much.
here. I didn't know she was here. Thank you, Maritza. That is my sister from another mama and papa. We know ourselves a whole lifetime. And she and I, she's also a mental health professional. And she and I were always talking about grief because, like I said, grief looks like this. And that's why even today, to come to do this, I was like preparing myself, right? Like, because it can be very triggering because I am grieving. And I want people to know that grieving doesn't always have to look like the other signs of constantly crying, right? Breaking down. It also can be, you could be functional, right? And that's because I'm in a better space. There was a time when my grieving was so complex and I didn't handle it well, where I couldn't even do this episode. I wouldn't have been
Wow.
able to do it. So you can be functional, but still going through your process, and to trust someone else with your heart. Like I trust Maritza Escaria. Thank you so much for being here and supporting. But we can lean on each other and we can laugh together about certain, either the person that passed or a situation. So sometimes you can make light out of something, and humor can help you in your healing process. Don't feel guilty to laugh. Don't feel guilty to feel joy and pockets of joy, and have some laughter as well. Like tonight, we just ended with such a great time here laughing. And I think that's all part of our journey.
Awesome. So, well, thank you, Coach Smilie, for sharing
Oh,
such
thank
powerful
you.
insights tonight.
Oh, thank
And
you.
everyone listening, if you are grieving this holiday season, please know this.
Yes.
Your feelings are valid, your peace is your own, and you're allowed to take care of your heart. We love you. We're praying for you. And you never have to walk with grief alone. So, this has been Maria and friends. Until next time, take one day at a time, one breath, and one moment at a time. Thank you
Yes.
so much. We'll see you guys.
And no donuts in the parking lot.
No donuts in the parking lot. We can eat some donuts, but no donuts, no reckless behavior. Take good care. Take good care. And I hope to see you guys. Also, you can follow me at Smilie Empowerment across social media platforms, my podcast, and I'm always here if you need support. Drop in the comments if you have further questions. I'll be looking in and reaching out as well.